All right, friends, today we are going to learn how to make this piece of cake sculpture, and it's going to be a piece of cake. Okay, so what you're going to need for this is you're going to need this paper that I gave you in your bag and the cardboard, and you're going to need some tape, some masking tape. That's something that you have to provide. I didn't put any masking tape in there because I didn't have enough to give everybody their own roll of masking tape. You're going to need some warm water, and you're going to need the plaster that I gave you. All right, and some scissors. Okay, so let's get started. You will need to cut these out, cut these shapes out, and then you need to trace them trace this one twice, trace this one twice, and trace this one once. It even tells you how to do it okay? So I already did that, and so now I have my two triangles, my one sort of fat rectangle, and my two skinny rectangles, okay? I'm going to put this paper plate aside. That's what we're going to use when we are building our or plastering our piece of cake. Okay, so before you start putting your armature together, that's like the skeleton that holds our sculpture, or that's the inside part of our sculpture that gives it its shape. I want you to tear yourself off a few pieces of tape, okay? And what you're going to do is take one of the triangles, and we're going to put these tape tabs on it. So I'm going to put some tape under, and you can just turn it over and put some tape on it. You need these tape tabs to help make it easier to put your armature together. Okay, so once you have your tape tabs on, so this is the not sticky side, I'm going to turn it over, and this is the sticky side. Take one of your longer rectangles, and you can see that it lines up with the length of your triangle. So you're going to just pull it up and pull up those tape tabs, and then you have one side of your cake done, okay? Then you'll take the other one, line it up the same way. You can see that I'm lining it up with the point. Let me scoot this up a little bit more. I'm lining it up with the point because we can always cut off some of the end if it's too long, but make sure it's lined up with the point. And put your tape tabs up, okay? Now at this point, you might want to put some tape right here just so that your piece of cake stands up. So I'm just going to put a tape tab on one side, pull it up. Make sure that it matches pretty nicely in the front, makes a nice point. If it doesn't, you might need to trim it a little bit, okay? Now I need to put the back of my cake on. So the back is this piece that's a little bit of a fatter rectangle, and it should fit right in there pretty well. This one is a little bit too long, you can see that, but if I put it in this way, it definitely doesn't fit. You can see that it's not wide enough. So make sure you have it going in the right way, and line it up and put the tab up. Okay, now at this point, you're going to want to add some tape onto the sides here so that doesn't happen. So take a little bit of tape off, put it up, and what I find is the easiest way to do it is to turn it over, and I have a couple fingers under here holding it, and I want it to match pretty well. That's good craftsmanship. We want to be careful with our work. Then turn over here and tape that side. Now if I look at this, I can see that this back is just a little bit too tall, so I'm going to take my scissors and just trim it like that. Okay, and now these are all the same height. Okay, now before I put the top on, I'm going to put some newspaper in here just to give it a little stability. So you don't need a ton of newspaper. I'm just tearing off like one page here, and I'm actually going to tear that in half, and I'm going to pop it in here. And I think I want just a little bit more, just to make sure it's nice and sturdy. Okay, and then, yeah, that looks pretty good. And next I want to put this top on. So I'm going to do the same thing with the tape tabs. I'm going to tear off some tape, probably about 5 pieces. Put it on the side of my desk here. And then I'm going to check and see which side the tape needs to be on. It needs to be on this side. Okay, and then I'm going to put the rest of the tape tabs on. So I'm putting them on the edge here so that the sticky side is up. Now the sticky side is down. Okay, so there's my piece with all the tape tabs. I'm going to pop that down in there. And I'm going to lay this on here. Now this is another point where you need to be pretty careful. Good craftsmanship. Take your time. Okay, match up the edges and push the tabs down. Match up the edges and pull the tabs down. Match up the edges and pull the tabs down. Okay? All right, so there's my piece of cake. Now, when you start to plaster, sometimes the plaster can start soaking through if you have just cardboard. Oh, here's another thing. Let's take a look at this. So I've got this little edge sticking out here, so I'm just going to trim it. Just kind of look and make sure you don't have any edges that are really sticking out, because if you do, then your cake's that edge is gonna show up in your cake, okay? If you have an edge that's a little bit open like that, that's not a problem, because first of all, you can tape over it like this, and second of all, when you start your plastering, you'll cover that with plaster, okay? Now, I was saying that your cardboard, that when you start plastering it, sometimes the cardboard gets a little flimsy. So to make sure that your cardboard doesn't get soggy, and then what will happen is like this will sink in, you want to cover most of your cake with tape. So I'm just carefully covering it with tape. Now at this is the point where I should probably fast forward if I knew how to do that. I do not know how to do that just yet. I should probably ask Mr. Bruno to show me how to do that. So what you can do is you can fast forward in just a second, so I'm going to tell you one more thing. You can fast forward till you see me getting the plaster out. But before you do that, here's an important thing. Do you see where these edges meet? Make sure that you tape over those edges like that. That just gives it a little more sturdy, makes it a little more sturdy. You definitely want this to be sturdy because we're covering it with plaster. Okay, so once most of your cake piece is covered with tape, then you'll be ready to start plastering. Okay, this looks pretty good. So I'm going to set my tape aside and I'm going to get ready for the plaster. Now you need warm water to activate your plaster. So if your water is not warm, you need to make sure it is warm. So I'm going to put some fresh water in here and just a little bit. You only need a little bit of water because when you're finished with this, you do not want to put this water down the drain because plaster is not good for your drain. Okay, so here's another point in this project where you need to be careful in thinking about craftsmanship. So as you put your plaster on, you want to make sure that you rub it nicely and gently and smooth it down with your finger so that all those little holes disappear. Now, the reason I gave you this bowl in your pack is because it has this little lip on it. And this little lip is really handy because you can just drag your plaster over that lip and it gets rid of the excess water for you. And that's really important because if you have too much water, your project is going to get pretty soggy. Okay, so you only need one layer of plaster to make this nice and sturdy. So you need to overlap just the edges, but you don't need to overlap the whole piece of plaster. It's important when you're plastering that you go over these edges where you know that your cardboard met. So I'm going to make sure that I go over that edge and smooth it down so you can hardly even see where those two pieces were joined. Okay, and when you're plastering the side, you might want to make sure, you do want to make sure that some of your plaster goes over those edges. Okay, it makes it much smoother. Okay, now you might find when you're plastering that you don't have a piece that's the right size. Maybe it's a piece that's just a little bit too big and you don't want to waste it. You can just use your scissors and you can cut little pieces of plaster. Like I see this corner here that needs to be covered. I don't need a giant piece for that. So you can just cut your plaster so that it's the size that you need, okay? Now, if you're plastering and you find that you don't have enough plaster, then you can email me and I can send you some more. And don't worry if you only get like maybe this much done and you need to stop, that's okay. You can continue plastering later. You can just keep going as if you never stopped. You can overlap it a little. You don't need to go over the stuff that you already did. Okay. You can buy this stuff on Amazon. I think it's called plaster gauze. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it at Michael's and Hobby Lobby. They sell it all over the place. I just buy it, you know, in giant bulk size because I use a lot of it. Okay, so I'm looking carefully, or I'm smoothing down all these edges, and you do need to do the bottom as well so that your cake is complete. Okay. I'm always taking care to make sure I smooth down the edges. I don't want any edges sticking up. You see like that edge that's sticking up right there. I smooth that down so it looks good. And like I said, you need to overlap a little bit, but not a ton. Okay, so if that kind of thing happens, where it got a little bumpy there, just try to smooth it out a little bit and then just leave it. Okay. So I just have a little bit more on the back and the bottom to do, and then I will be finished with this part of the cake. Now the plaster takes about 15 minutes to dry so that you could move it without breaking it or harming it in any way, but you don't want to paint it until I would wait overnight to paint it. Now, when you're getting ready to paint it, I did include some paint in your bag. I included some brown and some white so that you could make chocolate. When I made mine, and I'll show it to you as soon as I'm done here, I made a double layer, and I put chocolate with chocolate frosting, and then I put white frosting on the top. So I mixed some colors. I mixed a little bit of black to make the brown look like darker chocolate. I only gave you white and brown. So if you need other colors, I just didn't know what colors you would want to use for your frosting, so I didn't put any others in. But if you need other colors that you don't have, you can either go to Walmart and buy some acrylic paint, or you can email me and tell me exactly what color you want, and then I can pop some in the bin and you can have it, okay? So you can see how I'm pretty much finishing up now, and I just have this little point here. I just want to put a little bit of plaster on that little point, okay? Smooth it down. I especially don't want to bump there. And the rest of it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to let it sit here and dry. Oh, I see a spot right there I missed. So the paint, if you go to Walmart to buy the paint, this is the paint that you buy. It's like 50 cents for these little bottles, so you could buy the colors that you want. If you want, let me bring this over. So when I made this cake, I used a darker brown, or almost, yeah, I added some black to the brown to make it dark, and then some white to make it a little bit lighter for the middle. And then the top is made with stuff called spackle. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Or you can just use white paint on the top. That's also fine. Okay, so that will be in the next video when I talk to you about how to put the frosting on your cake. All right, friends, so we have made our slice of cake, and remember, don't pour this water down the drain, and I will see you later.